yourself tonight. Let the beauty set you free. Let the music set you free. Oh yeah. Take a break from life. Won't you come and spend some time?
Hi, I'm Mariann Johansen-Ellis, and you are welcome back to Cascada Studio, where we today are going to do the third part in our three-part series about etching. In the first film, we put the line etching onto the copper plate. In the second part, we soft grounded a feather onto the plate. And today, we are going to add the Aquatint. You look at the plate now, and I've degreased it. As soon as you have soft ground on the plate, you want to degrease the plate, which I showed you in the part one, very carefully. You want to be very gentle. For some reason, when you have soft ground, the copper will oxidize a little bit as you clean it off. This makes no difference whatsoever. It's just a visual thing, but it makes no difference whatsoever to putting on the Aquatint or the result. I'm going to start a little bit today. I'm going to introduce to you the things that you use to put Aquatint onto a plate. So first of all, I'm going to introduce you to my Aquatint box, which I've built myself. I looked on the internet and I found a lot of information about how to do an Aquatint box. Mine is made out of wood. It's quite simple. It has a hatch. I made a grid of some wood to put my plate onto. It has a hole in the bottom of the box, and I actually use, to stir the rosin powder up in the box, I use a fireplace bellows. Works great, no electricity needed, and easy to do. Now, in the box, what makes an Aquatint is powder rosin. This is Graphic Chemicals powder rosin. Rosin is actually pine sap. So you can buy it in crystal form, and then it looks like this. Real diehards will use a mortar and grind their own rosin powder. This is not a very easy thing to do, so I would suggest, if you haven't tried it before, that you simply do what I do, which is buy the rosin powder. The thing with the crystals is that you can grind it to the coarseness that you want. And of course, if you have different coarseness, you get a different result. But this is getting a little bit advanced, so it's a little bit ahead of ourselves. Today we're going to do a straight up Aquatint with a fine ground rosin powder. The rosin powder I have put in to the bottom of my box. So it's lying in the bottom. I have a V trough in there. And when I put the bellows in the hole and apply air, that rosin powder swirls up into the air. Of course, I'm going to do that with my hatch closed. I put the bellows in and I start blowing. If your rosin powder is new, you're not going to need to blow that much for it to swirl up. I'm just going to do a quick little opening here so you can see what it looks like. And you see, plenty of rosin powder in there. Give that 30 seconds so the bigger particles settle. What you want is like a nice uniform covering of the rosin powder. So you want the big particles to settle. Put your copper plate on a piece of cardboard. The reason you have it on a piece of cardboard is because otherwise the rosin powder tends to not want to set on the edges. On a piece of cardboard it does. We open the box, we put the plate in, and we close the box. Here is a bit of trial and error and judgment, because how long is it going to be in the box? That's an almost impossible question to answer. I would say for the bigger particles to settle about 30 seconds, and I would say for enough powder to land on the plate maybe about 60 seconds. But of course it depends. Is it humid? How much powder you have in the box? There's different things that play in here. So you actually have to do a little bit of trying. Make yourself some small copper plates and just try out and see how you get along. I think we would have enough powder on the plate. Plenty. If you come a little bit closer, I think you can clearly see it. Very careful that you don't have any wind or that you don't blow onto the plate. I'm now going to transfer the plate from the piece of cardboard onto my barbecue rack. This is because I'm now going to heat the plate with my blowtorch to fuse or melt the Aquatint powder onto the plate. Of course, I'm going to put on my safety glasses. I have a handheld blowtorch, which is easy to work with. I lift my rack up a little bit and I start heating the plate. This, of course, is also depends a little bit on what the weather is like. If it's nice and warm, the heating of the plate is going to be a lot quicker than if it's cold. Now what happens here is that you will all of a sudden see how the plate, which has a yellow dusty look to it, will start to go transparent. That is the rosin particles melting onto the plate. Here it goes. You see it? You're going to be careful to not overheat the plate. If you overheat, all you're going to get is one solid coat of rosin and the acid can't get in there. There you go, we're done. Turn off the blowtorch and careful, you really don't want to touch this plate. Remember that copper is a heat conducting element, so it actually stays really hot for quite a while. So we're going to wait for this to cool off, and we'll come back and I'll take you on to the further steps. Now you see this. This is the whole point of pulling some proofs of your plate. Because I'm now going to do all my shading in Aquatint, of course it's really important that at least I have some sort of basic idea about where I want my lights and my darks. So at the finish of the last film, of the second part, I did 2 proofs and I used that as a guide. I can try out and I can have a fiddle around and whatever you want to call it to see what I would like to do, because I'm going to reduce the Aquatint, and that means I'm going to stop out or block out the areas that I want to be really light, like the highlights, the whites of her eyes, etc. Not really made my mind up about the frog yet. And then this works as a guide for me to take me through the process, because then I want the darkest darks to come at the end. So the tricky thing when you do this, you see, is that you're thinking in negative, and that means that you have to kind of turn your mind around a little bit. So I find this really, really helpful, because it gives me a chance of seeing what it's going to look like when I'm finished. Now I want to go back and I just want to have a little chat to you again about the plate, which is now cooled down after we've applied the Aquatint. You shouldn't really touch the plate once you have the Aquatint on it, if you can avoid it, because you don't want to get grease onto the surfaces that have been aquatinted. I'm going to use ground, just normal hard ground, as a stop out to block out the different areas as we go along in the process. Aquatint, when it's on the plate and when it's well made, the actual copper plate should have a grainy surface. Aquatint rosin is little teeny weeny drops, little teeny weeny round drops that melt onto the plate. The acid will then bite in around all those millions of little teeny weeny dots. And that is what gives the darker surfaces and the lovely grey tones that you get with Aquatint. I have a jeweler's loupe that you can look through, and you should be able to see every individual dot when you look through this. And if you're not sure, if you're unsure about what this is going to end up with, I would suggest that you clean the plate off with alcohol. Remember, Aquatint does not dissolve with dissolvents or thinners or turpentine. You use alcohol to take it off. And I would redo it. Because the shortest time involved in this whole process is actually to put the Aquatint on. And now we're getting into where we're going to stop out, put it in the acid, stop out more, put it in the acid, stop out, put it in the acid. And you can actually spend, if the plate is quite complicated or a little bit bigger, you can spend days doing this. So if you're not sure about your Aquatint, do you know what? Just redo it, because that's really the best way to go. So I have my proof where I have decided, more or less, I mean, this is a working guide. I've decided more or less where I'm going to have my lights and where I'm going to have my darks. And I'm going to move on to the actual stopping out. Okay, I'm going to put on the stop out. I'm going to start stopping out the areas that I want to remain white. You know, the thing here is that you really, really want to take your time. You want the ground to be quite thick, because if it's too thin, it tends to just run. And of course this method is called a reductive Aquatint. And it is time consuming and easy to fail, but oh so rewarding, which is why we do it. So I'm kind of thinking that maybe you should go and have a cup of coffee, and when I've put on all the areas that I want to remain white, I'll come back and show it to you, and then we're ready to put it for the first time in the acid. See you in a bit.
Take a break from life. Won't you come and spend some